when you can still the conscious mind and you can access more of the empathy, the soul, the subconscious, what happens is you start getting a much deeper understanding of really the simplicity of our human condition.
Any successful relationship starts with finding your center, the truth at the core of who you are. Only then can you develop the ability to truly connect with someone else. Concentric is about aligning with people who share a common center. This show gives you the tools and the skills to do just that through practical training, real-life stories and examples, and in-depth interviews with people who have taken this journey and come out the other side better for it. Welcome to Concentric. We're glad you're here. Welcome to episode 13 of Concentric. Today, Gary and I dig into the aspect of truly understanding the other person. Now, whether that's someone you're in a relationship with, or maybe just someone you're kind of in conflict with and you're trying to come to that resolution, the better you can understand them, the better that you're going to be able to communicate both your side, and the better you're going to be able to develop what your side should be in terms of what's really going on. And there's several levels to this. And, overall, this is one of those topics that it's a big, broad topic in terms of, conflict resolution and having those, as Gary calls them, the critical conversations. And we dig deep into this specific aspect of those critical conversations around understanding. Gary, of course, has immense training and years of experience in deciphering certain physical characteristics, body posture, all of those things that help him diagnose really quickly what's going on with someone. But we all have that understanding. We all know, even if we can't quite put words to it, we know what someone is feeling, and that, something's a little off, that will allow us to dig deeper with that person if we'll just have that intention, right? And we take those few moments to go, okay, let me stop the chatter going on in my brain for a little bit and truly take in what this other person is communicating, both in words and body language and energy and all of that. So we dig deep around this topic, not just the importance of it, which is huge, but really getting into some tactical how-tos to help us all when we're in that situation. All right, let's jump in. Welcome to Concentric, everyone. Gary, how are you?
I am great, Jason. It's so good to see you again. So I'm really happy to be on the show.
Likewise, this is so much fun. I know that we do this show a little bit selfishly because it's a great excuse just to reconnect and catch up and have great discussions.
True. You're my favorite part of the show, Jason.
Well, thank you. This is a blast. I know we were discussing a few topics to kind of jump into today. And I think this is a good one because, some of these episodes, we kind of go through these larger topics that have multiple steps within them, and we can get it intellectually, but in the moment, okay, step 3, okay, I understand that I should be doing this. How in the heck do I do that? There's a lot of those things. And I think that allows us to really dig deep into each one of those steps as we go to help give people that understanding a little deeper. So one of those that we discussed on a recent episode was is it Shuva, right? Like what that stands for. And I'll let you walk people through what each of those stand for. But there's an anchoring piece in the middle of that around understanding that, yes, and during conflict, you should look to understand where the other person is going, what they're going through. That's a very easier said than done principle that I think certainly asks to be treated with, a much deeper level. So walk people through that overall, approach that Shuva is, and then let's kind of dig into that understanding piece.
Okay, great. Just so I place acknowledgement where acknowledgement is due, Shuva is an acronym created by a colleague of mine by the name of Patty Beach, who wrote a book called Core Alignment, and it's a fabulous book, and it's great principles that are contained within it. So what Shuva stands for is really to fully see someone is the S. To hear that person. And there's lots of distinctions in the auditory system about truly hearing, which I'll speak a little bit more in just a moment. And then there's the understanding piece, where I think everything pivots around, for me anyways, personally. Then there is the V, which is validation, and the A, which is appreciation. But when we look at really truly seeing someone, I've been trained in a lot of distinctions in body language, and I'm just going to speak to the first three for just a moment. But to truly see someone, if you really look at a person's structure, that they're like, I've trained in Chinese face reading. So when you look at a person's structure, you can tell there's a line that goes through the facial structure. When the face is offset, one eye larger than the other, one side of the face a larger, more increased on the cheek, then more sunken on the other side. When you have this line here, line in the nose, and oftentimes what they call an intensity line that goes straight up the face, that oftentimes is going to mean that the mother and father didn't fully connect. Like they weren't connected at the time of conception, which is really kind of an interesting thought. And this is all based on a very, very ancient science of watching and looking at the body to get an understanding of the individual before they even open their mouth and speak. I was working with a client once, and she had the right side of her face was more full than the left side. So left side is mother or female, right side is father and masculinity. And she also was during the session, having pain in her right knee. Knees are always about forgiveness. So when you study body language, you can begin to start seeing a person right out of the gate, like what is occurring with this individual and what is their body saying to me. And so I was just studying her and looking at her, and she said, well, I don't know really, why I'm here. I just heard you were really interesting and great, and I wanted to come in. I said, well, we really need to work on something, because otherwise, you're going to pay me for nothing to have a conversation that doesn't feel moral to me. And I said, is it possible that you're here because you have unexpressed deep emotions around a primary male figure in your life, and that relationship requires forgiveness? And she burst into tears and she said, how did you know that? I said, well, your right side of your cheek is way more swollen than your left. You're constantly rubbing your right knee, which is about forgiveness. This is about emotional withholding. So that's how I know that. And she said, it's spot on, because I had this massive argument with my father. He had a massive heart attack. I raced to the hospital to see him, and he died before I got there. And she said, I have never forgiven myself, and I've never been able to create resolution with him as a consequence of that massive argument and then his death. And then the guilt ensued upon that, and that's what we began to work on. So the premise is to see the person. What is their body saying to you? The body is the biocomputer for the subconscious mind. So when we're looking at the structure of the body, We're looking at the different facial features, the thought forms that have created it, the overall emotional states that have impacted our physical features. Now, when we think about that, then that goes down a whole nother rabbit hole. Like, I am the expression of the combined DNA of my mother and father. And if you really go back into more ancient wisdoms, especially of the Native Americans, like, they carry the antiquity of all the thought forms, all the feelings, all the experiences of their ancestors within the sacred strand of their DNA. So the emotions and the thought forms create form. Thought creates manifestation. So over generation upon generation upon generation of having a certain predisposition to think, feel, and experience ancestrally through time, that begins to develop our overall predispositions for a certain physical appearance. Now we can say, oh, it's just my DNA, but the DNA is impacted by the resonant field of our thinking.
Yeah.
I love to say this, that 70% of our body is water. Our DNA is floating in that creative pool of liquid. Our thoughts are electrical charges. And what does electricity do in water? It conducts. And so how can our DNA not be affected by our thoughts? And then if you go to the science of epigenetics, where the emotional states, the thought forms of individuals actually turn on or turn off genes for disease or no disease. So when we really kind of begin to start looking at who are people, there's a complexity that rarely do people actually think about, which is, my thoughts are so powerful that I have to monitor them. I have to choose them wisely, like I'm choosing a fine wine with cheese and grapes. I have to choose them to bring the best results to me and my children, my family, and to the people around me. So to see means to really see another person.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize the point here too, that yes, you can go that deep and study and learn, and please do, right? More and more when it comes to seeing that other person. And you can have the insights and knowledge that you just talked about from what you're seeing. But even before you go down that road, even if you haven't studied those kind of things, this still applies with the fact, two things. One, to really take in that other person, because even if you haven't studied body language, all these things, you as a human, if you let it in, you can tell that if they're holding themselves or in a certain way, facial expression, and you really see it and let it in, you'll have a level of understanding there that's deeper. And then two is the fact that what you just went into was that a reminder for us to keep in mind that there's so much going on in this other person, and to be open to it.
Yes, that beginning conversation I just said, because I was just going to lead into how do we practically do this, right? But thank you for that, because you got me there much faster. But I wanted to start with here because it's going to bleed into the other aspect that I want to talk about understanding. So this is about being able to understand there's something far deeper going on, number one. So to really see, we all know that when you're just fully present with someone, your attention is on them, it's not anywhere else, then you are engaged and you're seeing them. So to bring it down to this very applicable and simple way of engaging with people, to give your full focus to that individual, to truly be 100% present with them, is also to see them. Very, very rarely do we give our full attention to someone. So to see them is to give full attention. To hear them, of course, is to be able to listen, and we all do this quite unconsciously, to listen to the subtle nuances of their tonal expressions, their emphasis on certain words, which always will depict what they value more or value less. When someone does what I call an analog mark, they move their body, they emphasize with a word with their voice, that designates something that's more important to that individual and the content of what they're saying in their narrative than other things that they've said before. So it's about speaking to those things that we can mark out as, okay, I'm going to ask a question about that because I really do want to hear you and find out what is really vitally important to you. When you start speaking in a conversation to more of the analog marked out words and asking questions about those, you actually start drilling down to what a values level is. And that's always a deeper, richer conversation.
I hope you're enjoying this episode. If you want to take a deep dive into the concepts Gary is talking about here and so much more, I've got something for you. From time to time on the show, you may hear us talk about Gary's course, Creating Incredible Relationships. This course is the culmination of Gary's 35 years worth of seminars, one-on-one training, and transforming the lives of over 11,000 people on 4 different continents. To learn how to build alignment and heck, just get along with others sometimes, we all require skills that are not commonly known and are not out there in the relationship development space. We need help. That's why Gary put this course together. The content in it is powerful and comprehensive. But just like we've done with this show, it's put together in a way that's easily consumable and quickly implemented. To gain the ability to take every relationship you have or want to have to the next level, go to garyscourse.com and see how to get started. Now, back to the show.
The understanding piece is where I think there's some real richness. And I oftentimes when we get on the shows, I think back to myself because I do a lot of couples coaching. I think, well, what were some of the significant pieces that showed up in many of the sessions that I've done this week? And this was one of those significant pieces. To understand another is incredibly vital. Sometimes people, especially in relationships, but of course, we have our relationship, we have our family ideal and how we interact with our families, but we also have our own individual worlds that each one of us live in and interplay with, that our family or our partner has nothing to do with. And oftentimes they do not know what's running between, the 6 or 7 inches between our ears. They don't necessarily know the depths of our deepest emotional states. So we carry around with us a certain culture and ecology inside of ourselves that people normally don't even see. So I was working with a couple, and the gentleman said he got quite fiery about something that his wife had said, and she broke down crying, saying, I'm in so much stress. He got up and he left the conversation because it had triggered off something massive for him, which we resolved later, but he had to actually take a break from the conversation. And so I'm working with her. She's pretty shattered. And I'm saying, what do you think is actually happening within him to have caused this particular behavior, which is uncharacteristic to how he normally communicates? So what do you think is actually happening? Because let's take this moment as a learning experience to deepen our ability to choose to understand rather than to condemn, to choose to stay out of victim and villain dynamic. And let's go into how do we create more empathy, more emotional intelligence around something that has deeply offended us, and step out of victim, take accountability, and get to solution. How do we do that? And so as we were speaking, I said, just close your eyes for a moment. And I use this one piece of data from neuroscience where they say, our nervous system's bringing in like 2 million chunks of data per second. We're only aware of about, 7 to 9 pieces of that data consciously. So I say, look, you've been with him for 20 years. So your nervous system has brought in like trillions of chunks of data that's at the unconscious level that you're not aware of. And I said, just close your eyes and just imagine his form in your mind's eye. And so she does that. And I said, now, with your imagination, because Einstein said imagination is more important than intellect, Let's imagine all that unconscious data flowing into that form that you're imagining. She goes, okay. I go, okay. Now, nod your head when it's full. She goes, it's full. I go, great. And then I say, now, what we're going to do is we're going to go on an objective, neutral observation journey. And I said, imagine yourself floating up and floating to a place between your form and his form. She did that. And then I said, now float over to him and float down inside of him. Your essence, your soul, your consciousness, just float down inside of him. But do it objectively with no preconceived judgment. Just float down inside of him and feel what's present. And when she did that, tears just started rolling down her eyes. And she said, oh my God. She said, he's like, he feels like he's carrying the weight of the world on his back. He said what he's thinking about is all the things he has to do at work and this crisis at work. And then he comes home and I'm in crisis and he has crisis everywhere. And then she said, oh, what I'm really getting is that he doesn't feel enough. And so he can't resolve the crises in either his work or at home. So he doesn't feel enough. And that's what he's really feeling, that he cannot correct anything in his life right now. And he's super frustrated. And I was like, cool. So we do a bunch more of that process. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. When she comes back, I said, what did you learn? She said, what I learned was that I have no idea the emotional stress, the turmoil, the limited bandwidth my husband has that he's operating right now under. And my empathy for him has just gone like through the roof. I finally understand what causes people to behave the way that they do. And now I can now have a conversation with them without being a victim. And I was like, that's the point of this whole process. Because we enter into this, oh, they did this to me, like I'm the victim, they're the villain. I need to find a hero to save me from this horrible person. They don't go to solution. They don't take accountability. This is what we all have been trained to do. Be victim, villain, and then blame and shame. The bottom line is always there is emotional states that drive all of our behaviors. And my belief system, none of us are evil. None of us are bad. We've just had too many series of experiences where we did not experience love. And we have fortified ourselves against the pain of rejection, of abandonment, and not being loved enough. And so when we get triggered off, whatever we have unresolved from back there kind of starts to show up and adds fuel to whatever the current experience is that we're feeling those same emotions again. We're not even hardly ever responding to the now. We're responding to our entire history of those emotions. So this process just helps someone get to the place of more of the creator triangle where I'm accountable for my own emotional states. I'm going to do the exploration to create a deeper understanding. And I'm going to find a solution through critical conversations with empathy, compassion, and with Shuddha to be able to, see them, hear them, understand them, validate them, and appreciate them. Then I can begin to start creating a relationship where we can have a conversation from the heart rather than from the head. And this becomes a critical skill in all of the relationship work that is up on the training, because we have to be able to do this. Otherwise, we become hobbled by our past and by out of control emotional states based upon unresolved pain.
Oh yeah, and the not the point, but the big aha in that process with her is that she knew it. She knew that information. The data was there.
The data was there,
but she had to quiet her mind and get to that point of letting it in, and she knew it. She had the answer right then.
One of the most beautiful things, for me anyways, is to witness people that when they can access that deep structure inside of them, they wake up. When you can still the conscious mind and you can access more of the empathy, the soul, the subconscious what happens is you start getting a much deeper understanding of really the simplicity of our human condition. None of us have been loved enough. None of us. All of us carry certain wounds and pains, and it's always in picture, sounds, and feelings and events that happen out here triggers all that off. And one of the pillars of creating incredible relationships is that I personally have to do a whole ton of being able to introspect on myself. You only attract the same resonance to you that you are. So if you do not make that evolutionary step yourself, it's very difficult to attract a partner who's going to pony up and actually be functional enough to do what we've just said: take responsibility, communicate strategically, grow their empathy, grow their understanding, choose to see, hear, understand, validate, and appreciate. And when they do that, we start having this incredibly powerful relationship that's based on mutual understanding, respect, and finally achieving that one core thing is to be able to love beyond appearances and finally be included and loved at a depth that we've not ever had before. And in my opinion, one of the greatest successes any of us can have is that we have the determination to create ourselves to be aligned and to create a partnership with another that is in alignment with an unconditional desire for that person to be the very best expression of them that they can be. When we get that, we've succeeded.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it's at the heart of any kind of connection that we want.
Yeah.
And that's why this stuff is so amazing and fun to me, because any little nuance that I can add to hear that other person, see the other person, understand them, and you'll see it, you'll feel it in an instant when they feel that connection, like, oh, wow. Because sadly, it is rare in the world, right? It seems to be that people really try to understand you and feel what you have going on. That when you do that for somebody, like you get to experience when you help folks, they shift and their whole energy changes, and it's amazing. It's wonderful, and I think that's what we should be doing here as humans on the planet.
It's the purpose of relationships, my friend.
Yeah.
Is to manifest and create the love that was void or less expressed in our life. And then to pay that forward to as many people as you possibly can pay that forward to. Because this is just not about personal relationships. This is about business relationships as well. People say you want to change your culture, you want to retain your talent, you want to have great managers, you want to have all of that. Well, you had better then revolutionize yourself. And remember this, that, the quality of our relationships is the quality of our conversations. So when we can show this type of conversational maturity, what happens is that we start creating far more profound relationships. And as the attrition rates increase throughout all of the industries across the United States, we have to understand that people will stay because of relationships. It's not even money that drives people. It's the tribe that's formed in teams throughout an organization. And it has to start at the top, because that has to be a massive value that becomes a cultural principle throughout the ranks and files of an organization. When that happens, you have higher retention, you have higher productivity. But the core has to start at the top. The leaders have to eat, breathe, and sleep it, and more importantly, demonstrate it. And when they do, everyone else begins to follow.
Yep, big time. This is awesome, Gary. Thank you so much
So well.
for diving deep on that. I love it. And yeah, more to come. These are fantastic.
Okay, my friend, it's really good to see you, and I'll look forward to our next conversation.
And we'll see you all next time.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Concentric. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd certainly like a great review from you on your favorite podcasting platform. But more than that, what really makes a difference to a show like ours is a recommendation to someone who would love this show like you do. Word of mouth referrals to your network and your podcast devouring friends is incredibly helpful to the growth of this show. For episode links and info, go to concentricshow.com. Thank you so much, and remember to keep building alignment to build a better life.